What's the most FK'd up thing you saw at a sleepover? Sleepover in friend's basement with 4 of us there. I think this was 4th grade. Sometime around midnight the host friend's dad opened the door at the top of the basement stairs to ask if we wanted snacks. But right as the words started out of his mouth, he comes tumbling down the stairs and hit his head pretty hard. He didn't move for what felt like forever, and we heard from the top of the stairs some delirious yelling. My innocent self thought it was the host's mom, afraid because her husband just tripped and fell. My other friend later explained to me that, no, the host's mom was drunk off her and pushed the dad down the stairs. So yeah, I guess I witnessed a wife try to kill her husband. Geez, what happened afterwards? Crazy drunk mom calls my parents the next night and keeps them on the phone for over an hour, and based off my parents' reaction I thought I was in trouble for some reason. Looking back, they were probably just questioning whether they'd ever let me sleep over at that house again. Anyway, nothing really legal ever happened, I don't think. The dad was a super great guy. Never filed any charges. Just filed for divorce about a year or 2 after this happened and got out. This is of course putting pieces of the puzzle together years later. I kinda drifted apart from that group of friends, and by high school we didn't really talk anymore. I did see the dad at a high school football game. He was with a very attractive lady and looked happy. A friend of mine at school used to recount her side of entire conversations from the day in her sleep, like a tape recorder. It was both weird and highly informative. That sounds pretty cool though. If she also relives the entire day in her dreams, it sounds like a nightmare. I was at a sleepover at a friend's house, and there were about 10 of us bundled into the living room. Me and another girl were last ones up watching some random shit on TV. Think it was Speed? Anyways, one of the girls sat bolt upright, and the light of the TV was reflecting off her face and her eyes were glazed over, and she wasn't responding to anything we said. She then got up, and we obviously followed her. We guessed at this point she was sleepwalking. Into the kitchen she goes, opens up one of the cupboards, pulls down her PJs, thrusts her hips forward and started pissing. We stood there in shock and hysterics, and of course, none of us wanted to touch it, so we just kinda shut the door on it. Next day we could not get her to believe us. Apparently had never sleepwalked before. One of my friends went over to his mate's house for a double date. They were watching Point Break and decided to eat coquito as a snack during. Owner of the house was absent-mindedly eating, not realizing that nobody else was. He ate any entire king-sized roll to himself. They all went off to bed, and the owner went up to his room. Around the middle of the night they hear fucked up sounds coming from upstairs and all go to investigate, including the girl the owner really liked. Because he is clearly in trouble, owner was buck naked in his inside calling for help, shitting and vomiting violently and uncontrollably as the dough had fermented and expanded in his stomach. Had to get the ambulance. Don't think they dated after it. I slept over a friend's house when I was around 10, and we were playing Nintendo. At some point he yelled shit, and without a word his dad comes storming into the room. Pulled him up and just started spanking him in front of me, then took him out into the hallway to scold him. Then he just came back as if nothing happened, but with a red face and teary eyes. It was the most awkward, uncomfortable night of my life, having to continue on pretending to have a fun sleepover after that, but I felt so bad for him. I did my best. It was what I imagined sleeping over at Butter's house would be like. I have another sleepover story that always sticks in my mind too, but does not deserve its own post, so I'll just summarize here. Watched Aladdin at a b-day party. Woke up later that night to friend's older bro jerking off noisily in his sleeping bag with the movie paused on a scene of Jasmine. The second story is hilarious. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things, went in his room, lost the TV remote, shut her door too loudly, and proceed to beat the shit out of her, pull her hair, and hold her down, and punch her in the sides. Literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us, and easily had 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her, and how unfazed she was by it. I was in the 4th grade when I slept over at a friend's house. It was me and 2 other girls. It was my first time sleeping over at someone else's house. I was always too scared to stay overnight anywhere but her, and I were close, and when I hung out at her house during the day we always had a great time. Well, I'm not sure what happened, but we were eating popcorn and I spilled some kernels down my shirt. We all ran to the bathroom laughing and got the kernels out. Some ended up in the sink. When her older high school age brother found out, he proceeded to beat the hell out of her. Me and the other girls ran to her room and shut the door. All we heard was her screaming. I felt so guilty I just wanted to disappear. She finally came into the room red and covered in tears. We never talked about it again. And I didn't have another sleepover till high school. At my buddy's birthday party, he had a bunch of us sleep over in a tent in his backyard. One of my friends said, "We are all guys, it's okay to be naked together." Well, some of the guys agreed and some didn't. I was way too shy to even be in my boxers around my friends at the time. Hell no, I was taking my clothes off. Well, birthday boy agreed. Macro penis. After seeing the other boys' normal sized parts. Yeah, he cried. Not really fucked up, but I was terrified. One night I slept over at my friend's house. I wake up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 AM or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. LOL. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up, and her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was. Or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. This one is my favorite, haha. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other two again. Damn. Sorry that happened to you. No worries. I was upset for that night, but was fine afterwards. One of the kid's parents paid their police officer friend to fake arrest the kid and act like my parents were pressing charges, haha. Yeah, I need a further explanation on that one. I remember my mom speaking with the mother of the kid. She said we had a police officer come back, quote, talk to so and so. The phrase back, quote, talk to was in air quotes, so I assume that meant the police officer came to scare him straight. I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with two other girls when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally, 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived, and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. When I was in 1st grade, my mom got a second job working Friday and Saturday nights. I would stay at my best friend's house. This lasted like 2 weeks until I told her all the weird things that happened. 1. My BFF was extremely skinny. She was way underweight, but her mom told everyone it was a medical condition. Her mom literally counted the grapes we ate. She had a very strict diet and pudgy me was starving. No processed sugar, no bread, no pasta. My fat ass was dying. 2. Her dad would take photos of us. Once he called me into the office where he had my photo up in a bikini with my chubby stomach and legs. He proceeded to Photoshop my body and make me very skinny. He told me how much nicer I would look if I dieted. He also asked me to sit on his lap and play computer games even though his daughter, my BFF, was not allowed in the office and she was getting bathed. I ran away and knocked on the bathroom door. 3. Her little brother was allowed to do whatever he wanted. We could only watch PBS. But he would have control over the living room TV and put in anything he wanted. We weren't allowed in the room. If he decided to watch TV, he could also hit and punch us with no punishment. He was like 4. 4. Her mom would give her bath because she couldn't be trusted to clean herself. She also had to wear the clothes her mom picked out. It was always really tight and too small. The second weird thing happened on the last night I ever stayed there. My mom flipped her shit and called CPS on them. She told me when I was older, my BFF disappeared to some private Christian school. When I saw her once in high school, she hated me and she was about 5 feet 5 inches and maybe 99 lbs. I would be surprised if she ever was in the triple digits. I really loved the girl. Edited to at, her brother could eat whatever he wanted. We would have half a banana and a hour's boiled egg for breakfast and he would have cinnamon rolls with icing and scrambled eggs with cheese. What the actual fuck? Sorry you had to go through that. That's fucking disgusting. When I was in the 6th grade I was going to stay the night at a friend's house, but we ended up at another kid's down the street. This guy ended up talking about how he would hump his bed until there was a wet spot on his boxers. He ended up doing this while we were in the room watching TV and then showed us the wet spot. And that was how I learned how to jerk off. Same. I was so confused when I saw the wet spot in my bed after doing this. I actually ran to my parents asking them why my pee was sticky. Haha. The relationship you must have had with your parents for that interaction to not be unspeakably horrifying is enviable. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with the whole year group. About 211-12-year-olds. To get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds. Separated by gender. About 30 to a room. Lights go out in my dorm. No teachers. Just 30-11-12-year-olds that don't know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts. A few others. Then, I vividly remember a distinct sloppy sound followed by a panicked "oh." A kid shat himself. I would also like to note, this was not the only public pants shitting by this kid. He did it again final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him. That's a whole different story. #OH. We were playing hide and seek with my friend's little sister and I went into the unlocked bathroom while loudly saying where could she be. Ma been here. The little sister was 5. We were 10 and the father was jackhammering his D while staring at himself in the bathroom mirror and had his other hand tweaking his nipple. I left and walked home. Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us in his room for the night we weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The doorknob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. Holy shit my inbox. Okay. The jar was for emergency use only and was emptied and washed in the morning if he used it. Probably rarely used it since most kids that age can hold it all night. He was a bad kid and stayed in trouble. Pretty sure the lock thing was to send him to his room and make sure he stayed there. Don't know about the parents' sexual habits, but I'm not surprised that most of Reddit immediately jumped on the drug-fueled Dodgers responses. What if there was a fire? That's what the gallon of pee was for. When I was around 13 to 14, a kid I invited over to my sleepover birthday party decided to strip down to his tighty whities right before cake and ice cream. Myself, my parents, friends and relatives were mortified. Apparently it was normal behavior at his house. Maybe he didn't want to get cake and ice cream all over his clothes. That's a good idea for a toddler who is a messy eater. But at 14, yeah, I really hope my daughter grows out of not wearing a shirt when she eats spaghetti. I'm 33 and I haven't. When I was 12, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having sex in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of stop, we are gonna wake up the kids. Me dad gets up, walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said see fast Analipi should have won an AskReddit, so this obviously messed with me going forward. Any trips after this? I just waited my parents out. They would say small things like going to bed anytime soon, and I'm just flat out like nope. They would fall asleep and I won. In hindsight, as an adult with kids, I do feel bad for cockblocking every future family trip. It would've only been better if you had your eyes wide open blank stare. I feel like someone like this would have just made direct eye contact and repeated, fast asleep apostrophe. There's the Oscar. I had a friend whose dad had a fish tank of piranha. I really wanted to feed them a hot dog, but her dad told me they already ate. During the night I snuck down to where the fish tank was, and there was picked clean fish bones in the tank. The dad was down there watching football, and he spotted me and asked if I still wanted to feed the piranha. Being a small piranha obsessed child, I nodded and produced the hot dog I saved from the barbecue dinner we had. It was the most terrifying and awesome thing I have ever saw. 10/10ths would never want to watch 3 piranha go at a hot dog ever again. Least not in person. This one is actually pretty cool and wholesome. Haha, yeah, was refreshing on here. I'm glad the dad was cool with it after he caught him, haha. A lot of dads are just grown up kids still. He knows piranhas are cool. That's why he has them. He wants to watch them devour a hot dog just as much as a kid does. When I was like 9 or 10, I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy shit did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. Edit. I have no idea how this guy turned out. We moved away soon after, and googling his common name is like looking for a John Smith. Also, another guy with the same name was murdered in the same town. It wasn't him, so it's buried pretty deep. Had a friend like that. Went to his house and accidentally went in the good living room and he freaked out. I thought it was super weird, but he got the vacuum out in order to remove my footprints from the living room carpet. It was in the thick pile. Not dirt or anything, but it meant you could see where I walked. For a second I thought it was funny, but he was so scared of his mom that it really freaked me out. They also had to shower sitting in their bathtub so that they wouldn't splash water everywhere. Super sad that people that crazy even have kids in the first place. That is a really shitty way to grow up. I hope he's okay. Yeah. Controlling parents breeds a lot of resentment, especially when you hit that stage when you start thinking for yourself, wanting privacy, and question what you've been told your entire life. Nothing like having parents you can't emotionally trust and you're always afraid of. A kid walked on the backyard monkey bars, slipped, fell, hit his chin, bit his tongue off. We come from the land of the ice and snow. The dad's mistress came over. Apparently the mother knew of her existence and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly did not cause a divorce. I was staying at my buddy's house when his dad showed up. His parents were separated, but divorce hadn't happened yet. Apparently mom had a new boyfriend over and somehow dad got wind. I still remember hearing him pounding on the front door and screaming while his mom and the boyfriend yelled back. Eventually the cops came and took his dad away for disturbing the peace or something like that. Same thing. We were huddled in the basement listening to all of it, and then his mom came down and acted like nothing had happened. Asked if we wanted a snack or something. I just wanted to go home. Found my friend's older brother's in body pillow. He had clearly did the dirty with it. His body pillow stands up on its own. His body pillow has a life of its own. Or several million tiny ones anyway. Wasn't the night. It was the morning after. I was at a friend's house in the big city when I was maybe 8 or 9. I had gone to the bathroom for an hour and gone out. Nothing strange. Then my friend goes in after me and comes back out. About 10 minutes later his mom goes mental and screams at me. At first I don't understand what it's about, but then she points me to the bathroom where there's a big puddle of pee on the floor. She made me clean up her son's pee because he told her I had done it. Needless to say, I didn't really speak to my friend after that. Was an awkward breakfast. Wow. That reminds me of my friend from 3rd grade. Long story short, I had written him a letter expressing disappointment in how he was ignoring me during recess to go hang with his new girlfriend instead. I'll let him know that I was okay with the girl and it would be okay for us all to hang out. He rewrote my letter, included a bunch of swear words and threats, and took it to the teacher. The teacher called a meeting with my mom, but they actually believed me when I said I didn't write the letter since the handwriting was completely off. I left that school shortly after and never saw that kid again, but to this day it is the most bitchest shit a person has ever tried with me, lol.